The notification lit up my phone screen at 9:47 p.m., and suddenly the air in my grandfather's living room felt too thin to breathe. My brother Tyler's Instagram post loaded slowly, each pixel revealing another layer of betrayal. White sand beach, crystal blue water. My entire family raising champagne flutes toward the camera. My parents, Tyler, my aunts and uncles, cousins I'd grown up with. Everyone. Everyone except me. My fingers went numb around my phone. 2 hours ago, I'd been racing through Atlanta traffic, my heart in my throat, thinking my grandfather had fallen and hurt himself badly. My mom's voice on the phone had been shaky, desperate. "We need you here, Morgan. It's serious." I'd canceled my flight to Chicago, blown off the biggest client pitch of my career, and driven straight to his house in Buckhead with my stomach twisted in knots. But my grandfather was fine, sitting in his leather armchair with the newspaper and his coffee, confused about why I'd shown up unannounced. "She asked me to lie," he'd told me, his voice heavy with something that sounded like shame. "Said it would keep things peaceful if you stayed behind. I told her no, I wouldn't do that to you." Now I stared at Tyler's caption. "Nothing beats family time in paradise." The timestamp showed it was posted 3 hours ago. While I was driving to save my grandfather from an injury that never happened, they were already on the beach. My name is Morgan, I'm 34, and I'm a financial planner. This is the story of how I stopped being invisible. I'd grown up in Atlanta in a family that looked perfect from the outside. Big house in Brookhaven, luxury cars in the driveway, a chain of boutique hotels that made everyone think we were living some kind of dream. But inside those walls, there was always a hierarchy, and I was never at the top of it. My younger brother Tyler got everything handed to him. Private schools I never got to attend, a Range Rover for his 18th birthday while I drove a 10-year-old Honda, a penthouse apartment downtown that he barely used because he was too busy traveling on my parents' dime. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs through Georgia State, graduated with honors in finance, and built my career from scratch. Every late night, every closed deal, every accomplishment. I thought if I just proved myself enough, they'd finally see me as worthy. The only person who ever really did see me was my grandfather. He'd built our family's wealth as an investment banker, made smart real estate moves long before I was born, and set up a trust fund worth $5 million to be split equally between Tyler and me when we came of age. He was the one who showed up to my college graduation when my parents were too busy. He was the one who called to congratulate me on every promotion. He was fair, kind, and the only one who didn't play favorites. But sitting on his couch now, watching that Instagram post, I realized my parents had been playing a different game entirely. "Hadley," my grandfather said quietly, using the name only he still called me. He was the only one who remembered I'd gone by my middle name as a kid, before I started using Morgan professionally. "There's something you need to know." My heart was still pounding from the Instagram post, but something in his voice made everything else go quiet. He stood up slowly and walked to his desk, pulling out a thick manila folder that looked like it had been handled many times. When he handed it to me, his hands were shaking. "I've been tracking this for months," he said. "I kept hoping I was wrong." I opened the folder, and the first page made my vision tunnel. Bank statements, trust fund reports, legal documents. Page after page of transactions that didn't make sense until suddenly they did, and then everything made too much sense. My parents had been stealing from me for years. The trust fund was supposed to be split equally, $2.5 million each, but the statements showed massive withdrawals over the past decade, all funneled to Tyler. $150,000 for his private high school tuition, $85,000 for his first car, $100,000 for that penthouse deposit, another $200,000 for his startup idea that never went anywhere. The numbers kept going, transaction after transaction, draining my future to fund his life. "They took almost all of it," my grandfather said, his voice tight with anger. "Your share is down to about $300,000. His is still fully funded plus everything they transferred from yours." I couldn't breathe. All those years I'd been working late nights, saving every penny, eating ramen in my tiny apartment while building my career. Tyler had been living off my money that was supposed to give me security, options, freedom. They'd handed him my entire future like it was nothing. "There's more," my grandfather said, and I didn't think I could take more, but he kept going. "They're planning to give the hotel chain to Tyler. Your dad's finalizing the paperwork right now. That's why they're in the Bahamas, meeting with lawyers down there to make it official." The Harris Hotels, our family's business, the empire my grandfather had built. I dreamed about working there, maybe running it someday, contributing to the legacy. They're cutting me out completely? "I gave your dad control years ago," my grandfather said, and I'd never heard him sound so defeated. "I thought he'd be fair to both of you. I was wrong." The room felt like it was spinning. Every sacrifice I'd made, every time I'd swallowed my hurt and tried harder to earn their approval. They'd been planning to erase me all along, not just from the business, but from the family fortune entirely. They were going to give everything to Tyler and leave me with scraps. My phone buzzed again, another Instagram notification. My mom had commented on Tyler's post with a string of heart emojis and "my beautiful family." I stared at those words until they blurred. My grandfather's hand found mine. "You don't have to let this happen, Morgan. You're stronger than they think." Something shifted in my chest, not just anger. That was there, burning hot and sharp, but something colder, clearer. For years, I'd been trying to earn a place in a family that had already decided I didn't deserve one. But they'd made a mistake. They'd underestimated me. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. The first was to my Aunt Rebecca, my dad's younger sister who'd walked away from the family business a decade ago. She was a corporate attorney in downtown Atlanta, the kind of lawyer who didn't lose cases, and she'd always told me if I ever needed help, she was there. She picked up on the second ring. "Morgan, it's late. What's wrong?" "Everything," I said. "Can you come to Grandpa's house?" 40 minutes later, she pulled into the driveway and hurried inside. She sat down at the dining room table, reading through the folder with the kind of focused intensity that made me understand why she was so good at her job. She flipped pages, made notes, her jaw getting tighter with every document. "This is fraud," she finally said, looking up at me. "Clear, prosecutable fraud. They've been embezzling from your trust fund for years, and if they're moving money to offshore accounts and meeting with lawyers in the Bahamas, they're not just stealing, they're preparing to disappear with what's left." My stomach dropped. "Disappear?" "It's a pattern," Rebecca said, tapping the statements. "See these transfers? They're moving money out of the business accounts too, not just your trust. Small amounts over time, but it adds up. I'd bet anything they're setting up somewhere in the Caribbean, planning to retire with clean hands and leave the hotels to Tyler to run into the ground while they live off what they've hidden." My grandfather sat down heavily. "I built that business from nothing." "I know," Rebecca said, her voice gentler, "and we're going to stop them. But Morgan, we need to act fast. Once that hotel transfer is finalized, it gets a lot harder to unwind." I thought about my parents on that beach, laughing and drinking champagne, thinking they'd gotten away with it, thinking I was too stupid or too weak to ever find out, thinking I'd just accept whatever scraps they decided to throw my way. "What do we do?" I asked. Rebecca's smile was sharp. "We hit them where it hurts, their reputation." My parents had spent decades building their image. Successful hotel magnates, pillars of Atlanta's business community, generous philanthropists, perfect family. It was all carefully constructed, all meticulously maintained. They lived for that image. If we tore it down, they'd have nowhere to hide. I opened Instagram again, my hands steadier now. Tyler's post was still there, his smug smile beaming out from paradise. I clicked to create my own post, my fingers moving before I could second-guess myself. "Funny story," I typed. "My parents told me my grandfather had a serious fall tonight, so I'd cancel my work trip. Turns out he's perfectly fine. They just didn't want me on the family vacation. Even funnier, they've been stealing from my $5 million trust fund for years to fund my brother's lifestyle, and they're planning to give him our family's hotel chain while cutting me out entirely. They thought I'd never find out." I attached a screenshot of Tyler's post and hit share. For about 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then my phone started exploding. Notifications flooded in, likes, comments, shares, friends from college, business contacts, distant cousins, even some of my parents' acquaintances. The questions came fast and, "Is this real? What's going on with Harris Hotels? Oh my God, Morgan, are you okay? The truth was spreading, and there was no way to stop it. My phone rang. Tyler's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering, putting it on speaker so Rebecca and my grandfather could hear. "What the hell are you doing?" Tyler hissed, his voice low like he was hiding in a bathroom. "Take that post down. You're making Mom and Dad look terrible." Terrible? I kept my voice calm. "They lied about Grandpa being hurt, Tyler. They stole my trust fund. They're giving you everything while cutting me out. But sure, I'm the problem here." "It's not like that." "Then what's it like? Explain to me how taking $2 million from my account to fund your life is anything other than theft." Silence. Then, "You don't understand. It's complicated. They were going to pay it back." "When? After they transferred the hotels to you and retired to their offshore accounts?" More silence. I could hear voices in the background, my parents probably, demanding to know what was happening. "You need to delete that post," Tyler said, his voice harder now. "You're embarrassing the family." "I'm not the one who should be embarrassed," I said, and ended the call. Next was my mom. Her voice was ice cold when she answered. "Morgan, delete that post right now. You're humiliating us." "You humiliated yourself," I said. "You faked a medical emergency, stole my inheritance, and planned to cut me out of everything Grandpa built. I'm just telling the truth." "We did what was best for the family," she snapped. "Tyler was ready for that responsibility. You were always so focused on your little career." "My little career that I built because you gave Tyler all my money?" "Don't be dramatic. We were managing the trust appropriately." "You were stealing. There's documentation, bank records, and my attorney aunt is sitting right here looking at all of it." I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Rebecca?" "Hi, Sarah," Rebecca said, her voice pleasant. "We should talk about the fraud charges and the embezzlement from the business accounts and the offshore transfers. Want to do this now or wait for the federal investigators?" The line went dead. I stayed at my grandfather's house that night, too wired to sleep, watching my phone light up with messages and notifications. Rebecca worked through the early morning hours, building the case, pulling together documentation. By the time the sun came up, the fallout was everywhere. My Instagram post had been shared hundreds of times. Local business reporters were calling, asking about Harris Hotels' finances. Employees started coming forward with their own stories: unpaid wages, corner cutting, shady accounting practices. My grandfather made calls to his old colleagues, and investors started quietly backing away from any Harris Hotels projects. Rebecca filed an emergency injunction to freeze the hotel transfer, citing fraud and misrepresentation. Over the next few days, she worked with forensic accountants who traced the full scope of my parents' theft. The offshore accounts, the hidden transfers, all of it. She also sent documentation to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division and the IRS. If my parents thought they could just wait this out, they were wrong. The legal paperwork showed the hotel transfer wasn't quite final. They'd needed one more signature, one more meeting. We'd caught it just in time. But the trust fund theft was clear, documented, undeniable, and my grandfather had one more card to play. He called me into his study 3 days after that first night and handed me a document I'd never seen before. "This is the original contract I signed with your father when I transferred control of Harris Hotels," he said. "Read Clause 17. I scanned down to the section he indicated, and my heart started racing. The clause stated that if any dishonesty, misconduct, or breach of fiduciary duty was proven, control of the company could be immediately revoked and returned to the original owner. My grandfather. "This is it," I whispered. "This is how we stop them." "This is how we take it all back," my grandfather corrected. "I'm too old to run hotels, Morgan, but you're not." The next morning, I walked into Harris Hotel's downtown headquarters for the first time in my life. My parents had returned from the Bahamas overnight, their vacation cut short by the scandal. I knew they'd be here, trying to control the damage, probably destroying evidence. I pushed open the door to my dad's corner office without knocking. He and my mom were there, frantically feeding papers into a shredder. They froze when they saw me, my dad's face going red. "You don't belong here," he said, his voice sharp. I held up the contract, the one with Clause 17 highlighted. Actually, according to this, you're the one who doesn't belong here anymore. My dad's eyes narrowed, but I saw fear flicker across his face. He snatched the document from my hand, scanning it quickly, his expression darkening with every line. This is ancient history, he said, but his voice shook. That clause is meaningless. Is it? I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of his offshore account transfers that Rebecca's forensic team had uncovered. Because fraud seems like a pretty clear breach of fiduciary duty to me. My mom grabbed the edge of the desk. Morgan, sweetheart, let's talk about this. There's been a misunderstanding. Where was the talking when you were taking my trust fund? When you lied about Grandpa being hurt? When you planned to give Tyler everything? The office door opened. Tyler rushed in, his face flushed. This is insane. You're destroying everything because you're jealous. Jealous? I turned to face him. You lived off my money for a decade, Tyler. You drove cars I paid for, lived in an apartment I funded, started businesses with my inheritance, and you never even questioned where it came from. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. The door opened again, and this time it was Rebecca, my grandfather, and two people in dark suits. FBI agents. Mr. and Mrs. Harris, the female agent said, her voice professional and flat. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and wire fraud related to the misappropriation of trust fund assets. My mom's face went white. This is ridiculous. We're pillars of this community. You're criminals, the agent said simply. You have the right to remain silent. I watched as they handcuffed my parents, as my dad's face turned from red to purple, as my mom started crying. Real tears this time, not the fake ones she'd used to manipulate me for years. Tyler stood frozen, watching his perfect life collapse. As they were led out, my dad looked back at me. You're making a mistake, he said. Family is supposed to stick together. You should have remembered that, I said, before you stole from yours. The aftermath took months to settle. The court case was comprehensive. Rebecca presented every piece of evidence we had, every stolen dollar, every forged signature, every lie. The forensic investigation revealed that my parents had transferred over $3 million to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, money they'd planned to live off after retiring. The court ordered those accounts frozen and the money returned to the trust and business accounts. The judge ruled that the hotel transfer was fraudulent and void. My parents' attempt to rewrite the family legacy was dead. But the court went further. Based on the contract clause and the proven fraud, they awarded full control of Harris Hotels to my grandfather, who immediately transferred it to me. The business they'd tried to keep from me, the legacy they'd attempted to erase me from, was mine. My parents faced federal charges. My dad got 6 years, my mom got 4. The appeals they filed were denied within 3 months. Tyler, who'd benefited from their fraud but hadn't actively participated in it, avoided prison but was left with nothing. The trust fund money he'd spent was gone, his access to family wealth cut off, his cushy life over. The Range Rover and penthouse, both technically bought with stolen money, were repossessed and sold with the proceeds going back into my trust fund. He sent me a text a few weeks after the sentencing. I'm sorry, I should have known something was wrong. Can we talk? I read it twice, then deleted it. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal, and I was done carrying the weight of his willful ignorance. Over the next year, he tried calling twice more, both times leaving voicemails asking to meet. I never responded. As far as I'm concerned, Tyler made his choice when he chose not to question his privilege. That chapter of my life is permanently closed. Taking over Harris Hotels wasn't easy. My dad had left a mess, shady contracts, unpaid vendors, a toxic workplace culture where fear kept people quiet. I spent the first month just talking to employees, hearing their stories, learning about all the small cruelties that had happened while my parents prioritized image over integrity. I started making changes, paid back wages in full, set up a scholarship fund for employees' children, brought in an independent auditor to clean up the books, implemented transparent accounting practices. Slowly, carefully, I rebuilt not just the business, but its reputation. Rebecca stayed on as our general counsel, helping me navigate the legal complexities and making sure everything I did was airtight. Having her there meant everything. She was the family I actually wanted. One evening, 6 months after taking over, I asked my grandfather to meet me at our flagship hotel. We took the elevator up to the rooftop terrace, and I led him out onto the deck where the Atlanta skyline sparkled below us, lights reflecting off glass towers. He had a glass of bourbon. I had coffee, and we watched the sun set over the city. "You know what I'm proudest of?" he said quietly. "What?" "That you didn't become like them. You had every reason to be bitter, to be cruel, to use your power to hurt people the way they hurt you. But you didn't." I thought about that. It would have been easy to be vindictive, to make Tyler suffer more, to publicly shame my parents beyond what the legal system already did. Part of me had wanted to. "They tried to make me invisible," I said. "The best revenge is refusing to disappear." He smiled. "The business is in good hands." We sat there as the sky turned from orange to purple to deep blue, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Not because I'd destroyed my family, that gave me no joy, but because I'd finally stopped letting them define my worth. Harris Hotels is thriving now. We're profitable, ethical, and growing. Employees actually want to work here. Guests leave positive reviews not just about the rooms, but about how they were treated. I'm building something real, something honest, something that actually lives up to my grandfather's legacy. Sometimes I think about my parents in prison, about Tyler struggling to build a life without their money, about how different things could have been if they'd just been fair. But mostly, I think about the employees who depend on me, the business I'm growing, the future I'm building on my own terms. They thought they could erase me from the family story. Instead, I became the one who rewrote it. To everyone who's followed this journey, thank you. You've been with me through the discovery, the fight, and the moment I took back my life. If this resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family or had people underestimate what you're capable of, hit that subscribe button. Every story we share here is about facing hard truths, standing up for yourself, and building something better from the ruins. Keep fighting for what's yours, and I'll see you in the next one. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.